I've been reminded we're a minute past due. Asking to call the meeting of Finance St. Joe School District to order here on Friday, May, what is it? 18th. And I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Segrist because he has all the numbers he's dying to give us.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks to everybody for being here on a nice cloudy Friday anyway. So we'll run through things today. I don't think it'll be a long meeting, but we'll go through things. If there are questions, feel free to ask at any time. First item we've got on there is the April board financials. I'll talk real briefly about those. So through the end of March, which March we're at 75% of the fiscal year is complete at that point. We're running at about 71% of our operating expenditures, so we are tracking where we would like to be at that point. Our expenditures are up this year, and I kind of jokingly said it sound like a broken record at every meeting, because the areas that we're really up in seem to be consistent throughout the year. Our expenditures are up about at $16.1 million at the end of March. The largest areas where those are capital, which we've talked about quite a bit, $10.2 million, with the majority of that being with the HVAC projects going on with the ESSER funds. Salaries and benefits are up $3.1 million this year compared to last year at this time. An area that we're kind of keeping a close eye on, and DLOs here, but instruction services is up $625,000 this year. The majority of that is in increased SPED instructional services that we're having to contract out. We anticipate that that's going to be about $1.85 million this year because we are having to contract so many more services out, and when we have to contract it out, that hourly rate is much higher than when we have full-time staff. We're about, we anticipate we're going to be between $800,000 and $900,000 additional this year compared to where we were last year. So that's an expense we're concerned about, we want to keep an eye on, but just something to note there. But we're required by law to provide those services, and so we're doing the best we can to manage those. Supplies are up $688,000 from last year. Food supplies are up $458,000, just like everybody else. Grocery store is more expensive. Utilities are up $315,000, and fuel is up $123,000. So that's where the larger areas that we have seen those increases this year. Tax revenues, so our expenditures are up, but the good thing is our revenues are up as well. Tax revenues at the end of March were up about $3.5 million from last year, and state revenue was up about $2.1 million from last year. So we're tracking well there. Again, we're within where we think budget-wise. When we brought the budget amendment a couple of months ago, at that point we anticipated right at about $1 million to be added to the surplus. That's probably going to come down a little bit because of some additional expenses that we are contracting out, and also the board is doing some things to fix a frozen step issue from years ago. So a couple of those things may eat into that just a little bit, but we still anticipate that we're going to be in good shape by the end of the year. Are there any questions about anything with the financials there?
The frozen step, how much is that?
That's going to cost us about $220,000.
How many teachers does that cover? Is that all of them?
191 staff members, I believe, is what Dr. Krause said the other day.
When you say staff, you mean teachers?
Teachers and
Admin?
other staff, non-certified staff. Anything else? Okay. The healthcare trust.
Let me ask one more question on that.
I'm sorry.
Let me ask one more question.
Sure.
I think it's just redundant and known that the $10 million for the air conditioning, that's not recurring at all, right?
No, that will not be recurring, no.
So when you anticipate gaining $1 million, is it except for that item, is that what you do?
We anticipate that at the end of the year, what we bring into our operating fund will be $1 million more than what we spend out of our operating fund.
And even with that $10 million in there?
Yes. Well, and the $10 million's out in the capital fund. It kind of operates in a weird way.
Okay.
But yes, even with those expenditures, we think we'll be up $1 million at the end of the year. Because a lot of that is being reimbursed through ESSER.
Okay.
The healthcare trust, at the end of February, was at 4.8 million, and at the end of March was a little over 2.8 million, and that sounds frightening when I first say that, but we'll talk a little bit more about that here in a little bit. But we have invested a little bit of our money from the healthcare trust. We talked a couple months ago. We talked a bit about, we have something unusual that hasn't been going on for the last 5 or 6 years. Everybody was paying 0.15% interest. Well, now there are opportunities for us to be able to actually generate some revenue from money that we may not need today, but we may need down the road in a few months or something. So we have started to invest a little bit of our money, and actually one of the things we'll talk about today is the quarterly investment review. And so even though it looks like that we were down 2 million from one month to the next, there is 2 million that is in our healthcare trust investment fund. So we will monitor that, and as we need that, we can pull that back into the healthcare trust. But we are running in good shape there in the healthcare trust. I do want to talk about a couple of things with our plans there, with our insurance plans. At the end of March, through March, our plan was running with a claims to funding ratio of 92%, which is tracking exactly with what we ran for the year last year, 92%. And so at the end of March, we had a funding surplus of $947,000, so in good shape. The EPO plan, and this one that we're going to have to probably talk about at some point, the EPO plan is running at a funding ratio of 116%, and so at the end of March, it was running at a loss of $474,000. But the PPO and the HSA plans are subsidizing that, taking care of that. The PPO is running at 80% with a surplus of $715,000, and the HSA was running at a 86% with a funding surplus of $706,000. So those two plans are offsetting that. Again, as a whole, we have a funding surplus of $947,000 through the end of March. When I talk about those three plans, the EPO, the PPO, and the HSA, it's alphabet soup here, I know. But what they talk about in insurance, they talk about a per month, per member cost. And so just to give you an idea of where we sit with that, our per month, per member cost with the EPO is running at $819. That was $752 last year, so it is up. But in comparison, the PPO and the HSA are running at $575 and $503. So that EPO plan is becoming increasingly expensive, and so it may be something we have to have a discussion at some point about. Do we continue to offer that, or do we say, hey, we'll continue to offer it, but if you want to keep the EPO, you may have to contribute more as an employee towards that. So just planning that out there. It's not something we have to decide right away. But we also know our insurance rates are staying consistent for next year. That's probably not likely to continue to fiscal year 25. So some things we'll want to think about there as we move forward. Any questions? And the PPO and the HSA are both down in our per member per month cost this year. So our employees are doing a lot of good things as far as utilizing their benefits in a responsible manner. We're not making ER visits that don't need to be ER visits, things like that. Those are things that really drive our costs up. So any questions about that?
Last time we talked about, like what you were saying, revising, maybe getting rid of the EPO. There wasn't very many people on it in comparison to the HSA and the PPO, was there?
We've got 23% of our employees are on it.
On the EPA,
Uh-huh.
or EPO?
Yeah, 47% are on the HSA and 30% are on the PPO. So, it would impact about a fourth of our employees. Something though we are going to continue to keep an eye on.
One way that you could consider pretty quickly, or not, it would take some time, but you could start it quickly, is not allowing new people to choose that.
True. Yeah.
That's a good point.
Yeah, that could be an option we could look at.
Then that would guarantee it would continue to lose money then, right? If we didn't have any new members coming in.
Well, no.
Well,
It
we
would just
wouldn't
phase
allow
it
anybody
out.
to go on to that plan any longer. We would grandfather the people who are on it now, but any new employees would have to choose either the HSA or the PPO, which.
That's a good idea.
At the existing
It would
rate.
phase it.
Yeah. Yeah, well, at whatever the rate would
Rate
be,
was.
yeah. Yeah, so I don't know, that's something I'll bring up with Watson, that's a good idea, Tom, I appreciate
Yeah,
that.
it'll be easy.
Yeah, thank you, that's a great idea. All right, any other questions about the healthcare trust?
Yeah, a couple, I just wanted to see, of the total employees we have, which was what, around 1,800, how many people use one of our healthcare fund categories? Approximately, give me within a few thousand people.
I don't have that number in front of me right now. I can find that out for you.
More than half probably of the
Oh,
HR
yeah.
employees?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Some reason I thought I kept hearing the number 1,000 to 1,200 a few years ago, which I don't know if that.
And I'm off the top of my head, I've got both members and then total insured, which are, people have family on, some people
Right.
have spouse on, so.
Right.
I can get that number for you, I just don't have it off the top of my head.
Yeah, it wasn't so much about the employees, the amount of people as the amount of employees
employees, yeah.
per salary that we're using
Yeah,
and stuff.
and I can get that, I just, like I said.
No, that's all right, no, I was curious about that.
Sure.
And so when you were breaking down something like the PPO, I think you would say, was it 80%?
PPO funding ratio is running at 80%, yes.
And then on that category, particularly, I know we have the HSA and the EPO, which is not making us money or running in a negative. In those type of, is it kind of evenly split between those two more popular categories of
The
employees?
PPO has 30% and the HSA has 47%.
Oh, okay, okay. Of the employees, totally employees.
Yes.
Okay, cool.
How much of a rate increase is there? I know you said at the last meeting there'd be a rate increase. Is the EPO rate increase going to be a lot higher to where it would encourage them to move over?
I can't predict that. at
No,
this
not
point.
sure yet.
Yeah,
I was
mean,
just curious.
Like I said, I know for fiscal year '24, we are staying the same, but for fiscal year '25, we're too far out to
Yeah.
even have a good ballpark, I think, at this point. But it was unusual that we were able to, I've got two people from the city here, your insurance rates didn't stay flat this year, I'm sure did they, so we were fortunate.
We're looking at 20%.
Yeah, yeah, I mean, our broker said that us being able to stay flat was not the industry norm right now, so. Again, though, something we're gonna have to anticipate for fiscal year '25, so. Okay, any other questions there? The next thing is, by board policy, we present a quarterly investment review. It's not something that's come up very often, like I said, because we really haven't had investments for the last few years. But we have started to, and kind of to give you a little understanding of this, the way our funding happens is, I always tell people it's kind of like Dad gives us all of our money in January and says it's got to last all year long. And so really that's the way a lot of our funding comes. It's very front-loaded in January and February when the tax collections come in and everything. And so while we have that money and we'll need it by the end of the year, we don't necessarily need all of it in January, February, March, April, and so on. So the opportunity is there for us to be able to make some investments, to do some laddering of investments over that period too, so that we can smooth out some interest rates that change and everything. So right now, we have, at the end of March, we had $26,500,000 invested from our operating account. And to give you an idea about why it's a good idea for us to be doing that, through the end of March, we had received about $51,000 in dividends. Okay, so that's money that we are being able to bring in that we've not been able to do that in the past. And our average rate on those investments at that time was running about 4.5%. We have some things in 30 days, some things in 60 day, nothing in anything long-term, but all within the guidelines that we have to do that, to be able to access that. Similarly, with the healthcare trust, we invested $2 million there. We didn't get that in until the first week of March, and so we really haven't seen as much return on that yet by the end of the month. But the rate we're running on that, our average portfolio yield on that right now is 5.07%. So we're getting around 5%. And I checked yesterday, the 7-day effective rate for the liquid series that we have is running at 5.018%. So that's kind of like a savings account. That is really some good interest that's being paid. So over the course of the 12-month year, the calendar year, we're going to see some good return on some of that investment. Again, rather than it just sitting there drawing the 0.15 that we've done for years and years. And so, so we'll continue to update you on that. But I anticipate we will see the benefit of several $100,000 though over the course of the year by utilizing those funds when we don't need them right away. Are there any questions about anything with that?
What do you anticipate, Robert, over the time period? How many millions will we flow in and out of that thing?
Well, we tried to be very conservative. Katie and Jenny and I are, we're nervous, okay? And so we didn't want to put too much in there and not be able to, make payroll, things like that and everything. So we went very conservative with the amount of money that we did put into it. And again, some of those are very short-term. Those bills will mature and they will come back to us at that point and everything. So it just depends on what interest does. But like I say, over the course of the year, we'll have that 26.5 million, but we'll have pulled that back through the course of the year.
Yes, smart.
And, I'm not questioning at all. I think it's a great idea that we're doing this.
Yeah,
Has it started happening within the last year or so?
We started in January.
Okay.
Yeah.
Why have we never done it before?
Because interest wasn't paying anything.
Oh, so it wasn't worth it our while. Okay, it was all about the interest rate, okay.
Yeah, the fact that interest is paying up around 5% now is,
But isn't 1% better than nothing for that 26 million laying there, right? When the 1% would be better than nothing if it's just laying there, right?
yeah.
I don't think you could have even gotten 1%.
We couldn't, no, nothing.
For a while.
If you go back 18 months ago, nothing was paying more than probably 0.1, 0.15.
Yeah.
And it didn't matter what investment you had in. The prime rate, the Fed continues to raise their rate. And that's part of why too, it's like, well, why don't you put it just in the short-term stuff if it's all paying a lot higher right now? Well,
It's hard to be aggressive.
it's hard to predict that, so that's why we've got some stuff laddered out, so that if that rate does come back down, which if you listen to things, they said the Fed was gonna make this last move, and then they'll bring them down at the end of the year. If they bring them down, right now, the liquid series is paying 5%, and we have one that's paying 4.2, our longest term one is paying 4.2. And you go, wow, we're missing out on that. Maybe by the end of the year, when it's paying 4.2, that will have come back to 3.8. So we're just trying to minimize our risk there.
But even if it was 0.5%, or did where it was laying already was getting 1% or something?
It was getting 0.15%.
Okay.
And
Okay, we
that
kind of
was
found
just in
it
our
much better than
operating.
that.
Yeah, they're just, the opportunities weren't there then.
Is this money, I know, right, it is what, in securities of some type that, is there a bottom, is there a guarantee that we wouldn't lose up to a certain amount of
No.
things go haywire?
We don't, by policy, we're not allowed to put in anything that has any kind of risk.
So this has no risk? This
Yeah,
is-
they're very, unless the government goes
Okay,
bankrupt.
that's
Yeah.
what I
Yeah, if the United States
We're
government goes
close,
bankrupt.
we're close to that, that's what's one. I think we're gonna experience that.
We'll have bigger problems than what interest we're getting on our money at that time, so, yeah.
Hey, Robert, good job on that.
Thank you.
Yeah, I agree.
That's good stewardship right there, it is.
Thank you. All right, the next thing on the agenda, this came up last month. We talked a little bit about, we did bring up the SRO payment because it was a larger item on last month's board agenda. We've got a couple people here that can kind of talk to this a little bit and answer some questions. So I'd just like to say, number one, we have a really good partnership with St. Joseph Police Department. It's a valuable partnership that we have. It's a unique situation for us in this community that we're able to be able to do that. There are a lot of school districts that wish they had the opportunity to have SROs and law enforcement partnering in their buildings and everything. And so we've had an SRO ever since I've been a school administrator. When I started at Central as an assistant principal in 03, 04, Greg Obdahl was our SRO at the time, and Greg was an SRO for a long time and exceptional SRO, and so it's always been a great partnership for us. There were some questions brought up with the invoice last month, and Mr. Carter from the city is here, and Commander Hart is here too, but Mr. Nolte and Mr. Carter have been meeting over the last few weeks, getting those things ironed out. Also, along with those conversations, that contract hadn't been looked at for a while. And so right now, we are revising and looking at that contract. City has sent some things, we're having our attorneys look at, and everything. Probably just a few things that needed to be lined out a little more clearly, because it just hadn't been looked at for a while. And so neither one of these things, well, the contract is going to be on as an informational item on the board meeting Monday, not as an action item, because we're still kind of working those things out. And then both the invoice and the contract renewal will come up on the June board meeting. But kind of wanted to let you know what was going on with that, because it came up last month. And like I say, Mr. Nolte, Mr. Carter, and Commander Hart all here, so if anybody has any questions or they'd like to speak to that, I would open it up to that.
I just want to say, because I'm the one who brought up the invoice, and I'll just say it. There was never a question of value or contributions from the police department. The issue has been the accuracy of the invoicing and the accounting that was incorrect, and the fact that the contracts hadn't been updated since 2017. And the original contract and ordinance was for 5 officers, and it's just never been amended. And it's just good bookkeeping practice to make sure that our paycheck stubs are matching the Excel spreadsheet, which then matches the invoice that we received, and that hadn't been done. And it does bring up concerns for past invoices that had just been paid without question, and so I do think we should audit back to 2017 and make sure that our math is correct. So if you guys want to come to the table up here, that'd be great, if you want to.
I can describe what was different this year, if that
Sure,
would be
okay.
helpful. This year was quite unique on a couple of fronts, but one of the fronts that was kind of easier, I guess, was the fact that our insurance changed at mid-year. We're trying to make some adjustments that ultimately make our family coverage better, but in doing that, we had to modify our individual coverage. So that meant our insurance charge for the first half of the year was actually different than our insurance charge for the second half of the year. It was just the way we structured it. So we had that element that was unique to this year. And then a bigger element that was unique was that on October 1st, when we were a quarter of the way through the fiscal year, we made some significant changes to police officer compensation. It reflects a difference in the market. What it costs to provide the police service is significantly different in 2023 than it was in really any past year. But we had to significantly modify compensation. That went into effect on October 1, when we were already a quarter of the way into the year. Administratively, we got something wrong on the bill because of those two things. Our bills have historically taken a snapshot in time, and we've created the bill based on that snapshot. When that time is the same from the beginning of the fiscal year, when those numbers are the same from the beginning of the fiscal year to the end of the fiscal year, that snapshot in time works great. It works just fine because the number doesn't change from July through the following June. When the number changed this year, and we took the snapshot late in the year after those costs had increased, it essentially caused us to overbill for the months of July through September, which made an impact on that bill. We have gotten a modified bill over to the district. That was it was a significant difference. It was $15,753 less.
Just for our half, total
For-
over 31,000, but.
Yeah, correct.
Correct,
Yep.
yeah.
So the total cost of the SRO program was $622,000 plus, and the district's half then would have been $311,000. We had miscalculated that total cost by 30,000, so I think we're talking somewhere around 7 to 8% that we had miscalculated. Again, a result of the fact that we did mid-year changes in the way that we did. in a way that we don't commonly do.
Thank you.
But from the original bill that you had given, I don't want to turn my back to, so people can hear, but the original bill, the insurance and the compensation did not go up from the original bill. It actually went down.
Right, so the original bill, we're talking about from about a month or 2 months ago? Okay, so what
Last
that one was a snapshot of what insurance costs on that day and what we were paying officers on that day. So what you're going to see is the number of officers making $72,522, I think, on that day. And that's what their annual salary is now. Where that bill was wrong was the fact that they haven't been making that same amount since the beginning of the year. Early in the year, a number of them were making a fairly significant amount less than that. That significant amount less than what they're making today is what was not discounted on the bill.
So my understanding from Gabe is that we're billed in arrears. So if that's the case, then the higher salary and wages wouldn't have been billed on the FY23 billing that we received.
That's what I was saying, that's what he said. He said that it took the snapshot later when it was higher, and it shouldn't have been higher.
The current bill,
Yeah.
the difference between the two billings,
I'm
The-
sorry, I don't want to get in the middle of that, but that's what I thought I was hearing him say.
We billed as if the officers have been making the higher rate the whole year.
Right.
Right.
That's not the case.
Applied that
That's why
back
it was
to
different.
prior periods.
Yeah,
So you took a current period rate and applied it to prior periods when they weren't being paid at that.
correct.
All right.
You got a number of 15,000. Was that per SRO increase?
That was the total cost. The individual officers' pay rate increases vary based on who the officer was and what their tenure is, but $15,000 is half of the total difference.
That you guys are getting prepared to refund us, right?
But we haven't
We haven't paid, we hadn't
We
paid
haven't
it.
paid it yet.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so they're submitting an invoice with. a
Well, they have
little-
submitted a new invoice with that reflects the $15,000 difference less.
But we still need to compare what the paycheck stubs were on the arrears billing to make sure that what we are paying out is what actually was being paid out for each officer. Because not all officers are receiving insurance. And so we're paying out $8,300 or $9,100 now for, well, the bill was 83, the first bill was not, the first bill was higher than that. Let me look. First bill was 9271, the second billing was 8350 for the insurance. But we still don't have an itemization as far as, we should be able, from an accounting standpoint, be able to match for paid in arrears, whatever those 12 months of check stubs are for those officers, we should be able, because the billings due May 31st, so we should be able to track our check stubs with the Excel spreadsheet to match it with the invoice, and we haven't been doing that. And I still question the invoices from 2017 to current. I still think we need to have an audit to make sure that what was paid out is actually what we should have been paid out and billed.
Out of concern for the fact of insurance, I did verify with our HR department that all of them do actually have city insurance, and they do.
And I think that's the thing now, is that Mr. Carter and Mr. Nolte have met multiple times, and we're confident that the bill that the invoice we've been presenting now is accurate.
But from a taxpayer standpoint, you guys were confident in the first billing and you were willing to make that an action item until I complained about it, and then you guys removed it. So that bill would have been paid, and the board members would have trusted the information and voted to pay for that. But the information was incorrect. So, you know, as Whitney says, trust but verify, and I like that term that she uses because it's true. We can trust our partners, but we still need to verify. It's no different if I was your property manager and billed you for a refrigerator, you'd want to see my receipt.
And we have done that now. I mean, we've gone
It has to
back
be
and-
transparent, it's tax dollars, so we should be able to see that's tracking, it should be able to be seen. Somebody needs to make sure that we verify, because we didn't verify the first time, So this is what creates a trust issue with the community, and I'm a community member, I'm still a taxpayer, and so now I have a trust issue that our invoices are being paid out without actually being looked at. And the board members are counting on the administration to make sure that those are verified, and it wasn't done. So I have to question past invoices now from 2017 to present. And I don't think I'm asking for anything unreasonable to ask for an audit, because we may be due a refund.
You know, the board can take that under advisement.
How much would this audit cost?
I mean, it really would be an audit of the city, it would not be an audit of us. I mean,
Well, we would be audited for what we paid out.
well, we can go look at that, we don't need to be audited to.
We should be audited for that.
I'm saying those invoices, those payments are,
I mean, you could
you
have
can go on the
somebody,
website and see what we paid out.
if you need a third party to do it, you know, you have agreed upon procedures or something that you can hire somebody to do. It's not necessarily a full audit, but they can specify that this is the area we want to look at, period. Or internal staff could look at it.
Well, our
That-
internal staff was gonna pass the first invoice.
Yeah.
So again, I'm not trying to beat a drum here, but that's what creates public trust issues, and we're trying to gain public trust, and we have to do better at that, just like following policy that I brought up at the last meeting. We have to make sure that our accounting is accurate, because this is tax dollars from the city standpoint and from the district.
The good news is, both sides are tax dollars, right?
Absolutely,
So,
that's what I
yeah,
said.
Same hands in your pocket. but-
Absolutely, that's what I said.
I would agree that, I mean, you could look at it from that trust standpoint, but I think you've established a procedure here. I applaud the procedure you have in place here with the finance committee, with a committee of people that look at these things and ask us as administrators to take a look. And I think I applaud that process here, and that process has proven to work. I mean, we did bring that to the finance committee, knowing that it was a large amount that we were going to spend, and the questions from you all have been, I mean, taken into consideration. That's why we met with the city, and that's where we've gone from here. I do think the processes we have in place demonstrate our willingness to be trusted, to look at these situations and decide, okay, I mean, and again, you know, that's why this committee is in place. That's why facilities committee is in place, to advise board members on, and advise us as administrators on where to go. You did that. We talked. We've talked with the city, and we've found the way we need to move forward. So,
And if the board wants to
If
have
they
it
want.
audited,
Yeah.
we're happy to do
Yeah.
that. I mean,
In all honesty, I do trust the process, and I think that you guys are on top of everything now. Changes in the police tax and everything, it did make a change. Questions are asked. And in all honesty, unless an audit is made, it will be continued questions, and I just want to put it into it. And if it's either our audit or like an outside, I don't care. I would just like it a look more in-depth in order to lay this to rest once and for all.
I don't disagree, I'd be happy to do that.
Thank you.
I mean, that, like I say, that would be something the board would direct us to do.
I would only ask that it be an outside source, because that's like asking me to audit my own files for real estate. The commission comes in and audits my files. They're not trying to close anybody down or ooh, gotta get you. It's just an accuracy thing, and it's not an attack. So I think people have to not see these questions and these type of things as an attack. They need to see it as, you know, we're gonna do better, and we see our weaknesses and we improve. Then we can improve public trust, and that's how we do that, is to be accountable and be transparent. I could care less if any of you come into my office and look at my files. I don't have anything to hide, and so nobody should be nervous about anybody. I wouldn't have one of my agents audit myself. I encourage some outside source to do it, so.
I'd be okay either way. I would like to know the cost of an outside audit first,
We'll look into that.
prior to going that route.
What parameters would this audit cost? What, would it entail just this SRO situation?
Well,
Right.
Yeah, I mean, that
Just
sounds
this?
like that's what the issue is that if the board wants us to direct us to do that, we're, you know,
Because when you're talking of audits, and especially the school district and stuff, to do something even close to a forensics type audit or a serious audit, you're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars.
right, you're talking about a complete forensic audit of everything at that point, yes.
If we're limited it just to this one area, can we do an audit in just that one area? I guess then you guys would have to work together with the district, right, to say, yeah, here's what we did, or whatever you've already approved, really.
Right.
What you've already brought forward and tell us, this is what's happened. That's what you'd have to show the auditor, this is what happened, this is the difference, right?
Yeah, under most circumstances, we would just bring you the information and let everyone see it. The challenge we have on this particular one, that we can't just put the information out for everybody to see, is we are talking about some individually identifiable employee information.
Oh,
So that makes it where we do have to
Exactly.
limit.
A little bit of the
limit
HR
things.
stuff.
And it was my thing, I mean, I don't want anyone's personal information getting out, anything like that. I mean, just having a look at the numbers, having a look at the contract, it all evens out, and then we move on.
I will,
Brad, I've got one question.
I used to bid that too.
You guys pay based on actual then, or do you pay based on a standard rate for an officer?
As it has been in the past, as it is under the current contract, it is stated as the actual cost of the officer. So it can vary depending on how much each officer
That's
pays.
what my question is.
One of the items that we've discussed moving forward is if we move to a flat rate model, so we don't have to go look at the individual employee's personal information.
I'm surprised we're doing it based on actual. But, you know, I don't think it'd be very difficult, to be honest, to take a look at what 6 people made in 17, 18, 19, 20, you know, those few years that Ann's mentioning there, and say, you know, we found something in the last year, in the most current year, there may have been something, but it doesn't seem like that'd be a very difficult thing to look at. I don't know.
I'll give it to Mr. Carter, we'll figure out how to move forward with that and then bring that back to the board for their approval.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
All right, any other
Did you have another
questions?
question, Kenny?
I have one more
No,
question.
well, other than, I suppose depending on what you guys come up with, if we really truly gonna see somebody, a third party, would it be RFP and all that kind of stuff?
We're gonna look and see what it would cost and things like that.
I have one more question. You guys are putting this, and I talked to Gabe about that. I said, like today, we had no attachments to discuss. So I don't know how, unless this is all solved before Monday, how can it be an information item when there's no information for Monday to make this an action
We're
item
talking
in
about the
June?
contract moving forward as an information item.
The contract, which then affects the billing. So it's both items
Right.
is what Gabe and I had talked about.
I don't know what you get talking about, so.
Right, I'm telling you. So my question is, unless things are completely
There is
done.
no contract yet. It isn't final.
I know that.
So
What I'm
I
saying
couldn't
is-
attach that. I can't attach something that isn't done.
I understand that. What I'm saying is for the board meeting on Monday, unless the attorneys are finished and it's completely done before Monday, which Gabe said it would not be, how can it be an information item to then make it an action on June? It
It
should
was
be
my
an information on
understanding-
June.
It was my understanding after talking to Gabe, it was only going to be a conversation about the discrepancy and about the plan moving
Right?
forward. It's not going to be like detailed about the contract and everything like that. It's only kind of like an update. It's just like it is now.
That's why it's an information item, and then the
It's all it's
contract
gonna
will
be.
be presented.
But the information items usually have information attached with them so they can review it prior to a vote. So I'm just saying
But
be
there's no
mindful of that.
information
I know there's
to
no
attach.
information, but what I'm saying is there should be, or it should be moved back from information. When you actually have the final, this is it, then that's the meeting that should be informational, not an action.
The thing is
So you
that
guys
the
can
board
have
members
time.
have questions about the contract. Everyone's not here.
Yes.
All they're doing is telling everyone as a whole, it was issues in the last one. Everyone's met, and they're working on it.
Correct.
If you would like an attachment stating that, because that's all that we're gonna
No,
talk
no,
about
that's
in the
not what I'm
meeting.
saying. That's not what I'm saying.
I think you and I are talking about two different things.
Yeah, I
I
agree.
mean, it's not about like, here's the contract, here's the cost and everything like that, and then I want you to vote in a month. It's not completed yet.
Correct.
We're not
I'm
able to
agreeing.
talk about a thing if it's not done.
I'm
I don't
agreeing
know
with
what-
you.
I don't know what the issue is.
Because they want to move this to an action item next month's board agenda when it's not completed yet. So how are you guys going to have it as information to understand what you have without the time to review the contract?
We don't need a month in order to review the contract. Like, I'll be able to look at the contract immediately after it's done.
Okay,
All of us will be able to look at the contract prior to making a decision. It isn't as if it's an action item, have a look at the contract, 2 minutes later, it's a vote. It isn't gonna be like that.
okay.
When do you think the contract will be completed?
Well, we have to set up a meeting.
Yeah.
Now that we've got advice from our legal counsel, we need to provide that to them. And then they need a chance to look at it, you discuss it with their legal counsel or whatever. And so there'll probably be at least a couple weeks of back and forth to get those negotiations done. So I would say at least a couple weeks, but
You think it'll be completed prior to the 12th? Because that's at least
Will
2
it be
weeks
completed
ahead
at
of the
least-
next,
It'll be completed at least a week before the board meeting, so you guys
Okay.
will have it for the review then.
yeah.
at the latest then on the 19th.
Yeah. If it's going to be an action item, yeah,
It's
we'll
an
have
action
to do
item.
before that, yes.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions on that?
Hey, one other comment on it, not a question, but I want to thank the city and the police department for the officers. You know, we, our nation's in a crisis regarding safety in school, safety, and so one, I appreciate your time being here, appreciate us getting this worked out, and Hannah, I appreciate you bringing this up. I'm not discounting anything that's been said, but what I am saying is, we appreciate the officers being in a position to help protect our children. And so I don't say that at every meeting, but you guys are here, and so thank you for the partnership and what you do.
I have another question really quick. How many SROs are there? Are there still 9?
There's 6.
6.
We're still understaffed by 3, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
That's what I was thinking.
We still need-
Of 9 positions, and we only have 6. Okay. Thank you.
All right, anything else? Next item, talk a little bit about board purchases on the board agenda for this month. One of the things that's a little bit larger that I'll just mention is some recurring software support license renewals. Some of those are a whole variety of different costs there. Some are a little over $50,000, some are over $55,000. But Jake is bringing those collectively as a whole. They're all renewals, they're ones that have been approved by the board to purchase that software in the past. These are the renewals that are just part of those contracts, so just want to make you aware of that. The other items, asphalt repair and replacement phase 1. This was part of the CIP that had been approved. We did bids for, how many different sites? 5?
Yes, 5.
5 different sites. Last month I had good news that the roofs came in well under budget. Asphalt is not coming in well under budget. So roofs came in about $214,000 under budget last month. The asphalt came in so much over budget that actually we removed one part of the bid that we were going to do. if you recall, we purchased the vacant home near Central High School, and we were going to complete that parking lot with that area. It's not a safety concern, it's not something that's urgent. We've pulled that off so that we can be closer to where we are budget-wise. And so, even with that, it's coming in about $129,000 over what we had budgeted. So a $722,000 bid. Unfortunately, there's only one bid. That may be part of why it's a little over, but right now, that's what the market is bearing out. We're getting one person to bid for these asphalt projects right now. Whereas the roofs last month, we did have 3. So that one's gonna be $722,000 to be the recommendation to do that.
Who is it, David? Who is it, Robert?
Keller. The other asphalt repair or replacement extension is so at Mark Twain, the Early Learning Center, to try to make this a little more friendly, to be able to run some buses, to do some drop-offs and pickups there. This money was budgeted through some ESSER funds. Again, only one bid came in for it, and it was $84,100 from Keller, and that will be the recommendation to the board on Monday also. And those are the large purchases on the agenda this month, not as much this month.
How do the buses currently drop off at Mark Twain that would be different?
DLA, you can talk to
It's
them.
actually not the buses, that area. The area that we're looking at expanding is because a lot of parents drop off, and we have a lot of car riders that ELC plus busing.
That was my
But-
misunderstanding.
Yes, that's all right. So we're gonna actually extend, for when we have parent nights and things like that, a little bit of the parking, so there's a little more parking for
Parking.
staff and families. The buses will still come through around, it's on the side, yeah. Yeah, we realized it when, because that's one of the challenges we've had down at Lake, when we want to have family events. There's not always enough parking.
Yeah.
And so we needed to make sure that we had enough parking.
Any other questions about anything with that?
Oh, I do have a question. Did you put these in the paper,
Yes.
the RPs? St. Joe?
Yes.
Okay.
Paper e-books
Huh?
and our website.
Okay, I was just curious.
Anything else? All right, Mr. Reader, your call. If you'd
Can't
like
make
to
that
adjourn.
one up, huh? It's almost Friday here then, huh?
Almost.
Okay, we're adjourned, if everybody's okay with that.
Is out.
All right. Thank you, everybody.